They called it Copperhead Valley, though no copperhead had been seen in months. It was the kind of place where cruelty could be bought for a bottle of rye and a laugh. On a parching afternoon, Marcus Brennan rode in with nothing but 2 sacks of cornmeal on his mind, and a hope Patterson had finally got a shipment of nails. He wasn't looking for trouble. Trouble, however, has a way of finding men who are simply passing through. He heard the sobbing before he saw the scene, a sound folded inward, strangled and wrong in a way that made his jaw tighten. He squinted against the hard sun and saw the woman, suspended upside down from the Golden Lily Saloon's front beam. Rope bit into her booted ankles, her dress torn from the waist, petticoats churned into a ragged nest. Her arms were lashed behind her, wrists rubbed raw. Her face was mottled crimson from blood rushing to her head. Dark hair fell like a veil across half her face. Someone had painted words across her chest in boot polish. Return to sender. Men clustered around, laughing with a smallness that felt like rot. One scooped dust and threw it at her, calling her expired stock. Another pretended to haggle her price with the barkeep. Marcus tightened his fingers on the rein and walked forward without speaking. He took his hunting knife out of its sheath, climbed the porch, and cut the knot without looking up. The body hit the planks with a muffled thud. The woman groaned. "You done it now," snarled Wesley Cobb, an old grievance tucked into his grin. He'd lost a cow to Marcus at cards the winter before. Marcus stood still, blade in hand. "You touch that iron, Wesley," he said low, "and you better mean to use it. And if you miss, you won't get a second chance." Silence spread like oil. Wesley spat and retreated. The others drifted away with excuses. Marcus crouched and pulled the coat from his shoulders to cover her. Her eyes opened, blue, wide, guarded. "You come to finish them?" she rasped. "No, I come to end it," he said. He carried her to the trough, washed the blood from her cheek with a bandana soaked in rainwater, and heard her rasp a name. "Eliza Hartwell," she said. "Don't try to sell me back. I'm not worth the trouble." Marcus looked at her properly then. Maybe 25, dirt streaking her collarbone, one boot missing, a spine bent by more than just the rope. He offered his hand. "I'm Marcus Brennan. If you can ride, we'll leave before the wrong men sober up." She rose on her own, barefoot and trembling, and found the courage to ask why he'd done it. Marcus answered without hesitation. His mother taught him there were 2 kinds of men, those who cut ropes and those who tied them. She studied him, then nodded once. "All right, I'll ride." She did not ride behind him as cargo. She rode beside him, coat wrapped round her shoulders like a banner. They left Copperhead Valley in a silence full of something like agreement. Marcus's cabin sat on a hummock of earth. 2 rooms, ADZ stove that smoked when it rained, walls chinked with clay. To Eliza, it was a refuge. She washed without complaint and sat at the edge of the bed without touching the food he laid out. "You plan on selling me back?" she asked at last. "No." He stacked wood and watched the fire's light sketch her face. "No man with any conscience leaves another hung upside down like meat." The answer cracked something open in her. She whispered that he'd been the first to look at her and not measure her by silver. He made his blanket by the hearth. She slept in the bed. By dawn, she was gone. A brief note, "Thank you, but I bring danger. I won't see you punished for my past." She'd taken no supplies, only courage and boot prints that led south toward a jagged rim of bluffs. Marcus saddled and followed. He found her at the ravine's edge. Wind tugged at her torn skirt. She'd planned to walk until she could no longer. "Go back," she told him. "Tell me what I'm riding into," Marcus said. She confessed that she had forged marriage papers, answered an ad to escape a man in Kansas who had owned her like livestock. She had been sold by a stepfather, forced into a contract, beaten. She had run. "Did he kill? Did you steal?" Marcus asked. "No." The rest was a silence full of shame and survival. Marcus said he didn't care about forged papers. The law might, but he answered that she wasn't alone now. That word, alone, broke something inside her. For the first time, she didn't run. They returned together. Eliza kept watch by the door for hours, fingers loose around a cup of coffee. At last, she unwrapped a folded courthouse sheet kept beneath her bodice, a warrant for her arrest. She burned it in the stove and watched the paper curl to ash. When they rode into Copperhead Valley the next day, Eliza did not hide. She wore the torn dress as armor, the torn lace repaired with clumsy stitches, a linen kerchief at her throat, and an iron brooch, Marcus's mother's, pinned over the place where return to sender had been painted. Heads turned, the town held its breath. Marcus tethered his horse at the sheriff's office. "You sure?" he asked. She nodded. "They took my name. They don't get my silence." Sheriff Daniel Garrett peered from his door, pipe in hand. He almost dropped it when he saw her. She did not beg. She walked into his office and declared herself born Eliza Harrows, sold at 16, forced into ownership by a man who'd bought her. She would not hide any longer. She would live under the law of this territory. Garrett listened. He had a file from Kansas, a circular with her face and a list of crimes: desertion, theft, breach of contract. He knew the judge named on it was under investigation for coercion and fraud. He stood, went to the safe, and slammed down a weathered packet on the desk. "This town doesn't hand people over to men who brand them like cattle," he said. "This is Colorado territory. We do things different." Outside, Briggs the saloon keeper spat. "She lied to us all." Garrett's jaw set. "And you run illegal gaming. Want to start trading sins?" The crowd shifted. Old grievances weighed less in the light of a human being refusing to dissolve into rumor. Marcus stood and said he would vouch for her. She came honest to this place, not to harm, but to survive. Eliza added that she had done what she had to, and if the cost was her reputation, then let the town judge her on who she was, not on the lies forced upon her. The sheriff stepped onto the porch and declared, "This woman is under territorial sanctuary. Anyone who challenges that will answer to me." The words landed and spread like seed on hard ground. In the weeks after, Marcus gave her a bundle of his sister Caroline's notebooks, medical notes, pressed plants, remedies, stitched charts. They had belonged to a woman who had died young, but had taught herself from wandering doctors. Eliza read them by the stove until the light went silver and her name felt solid on the page. Her work began quietly. Patterson offered the abandoned barber's shop. The blacksmith carved a sign. The town supplied curtains and a few coins. She opened a clinic with no fanfare, Hartwell Clinic, all welcome. The sick came, miners with cracked hands, children with fever, old men coughing their regrets into coarse handkerchiefs. Eliza's hands stitched and set and soothed. She learned the rhythm of wounds and learned how to make a fever break. Word traveled, and not all of it was kind. From Kansas a rider came one evening, Josiah Crane, polished boots and folded papers. A man whose clothes announced authority the way a banner announces a claim. He tethered his gelding and asked for Sheriff Garrett. "You must be Crane," Garrett said. "I am," Crane said smoothly. "I want my property returned. I have a warrant, papers signed by Judge Elmsley of Benton County. Hand her over and be done with it, or I return with federal men." The town watched. Marcus stepped forward. "She's not property." Crane's smile sharpened. "You have no idea who you're telling off, stranger." Marcus only asked why Crane's hands were shaking. The observation cut something small and true out of the man's chest. Crane blustered, then rode out to marshal outside help. The town gathered in the church hall and argued until voices were raw. Briggs predicted ruin. Patterson mended his own fear into defiance. The schoolmistress, Mrs. Haverford, rose and told of the night Eliza had watched over her sister's fever until dawn. "She saved a child of mine when no one else would," the woman said. "I say we stand for her." One by one the town stood, the blacksmith, the baker, mothers with babies at their hips. Even a few who had jeered now found their feet beneath them. Crane returned with 2 agents in gray coats and tarnished badges. They had rifles and official airs. Garrett met them at the saloon. "She's not going anywhere with you," he said. "We have jurisdiction," said one. "Show me a warrant." "From someone not under investigation," Garrett replied. No such paper arrived. Crane seethed. He demanded compliance, citing federal fraud. Eliza stepped forward with a calm that startled even Marcus. She confessed to forging documents because no court had listened to the truth. She held up a petition sworn by townsfolk and filed under territorial sanctuary law. Signed, witnessed, supported. The agents exchanged uneasy looks. Crane moved closer, dangerous as a snake ready to strike. Marcus put himself between them. "Turn around and ride away," he told Crane. You want her, you'll have to go through me, and you'll have to go through every person standing here." The agents stepped back. Their orders did not reach into heart-bound sanctuary backed by a town. Crane found no eager deputies and no easy law. He had a declaration on paper, but no men willing to burn a town to reclaim a claim. He spat, vowed revenge, and rode away. He never returned. Weeks later, a federal missive confirmed the sanctuary provision. Eliza was permitted to remain. Her past stayed in Kansas like a bitter letter she had burned. Copperhead Valley, however, kept the memory of the day they chose dignity over convenience. The clinic grew, curtains hand-sewn, a shelf of remedies, a ledger that recorded names of those who could pay and those who couldn't. Eliza treated sprains and smallpox scars, delivered babies on the kitchen table, stitched heads that had been split by mining picks. Marcus built shelves and fixed the stove. The blacksmith made a sign. Ferried by word of mouth, the Hartwell Clinic became a place where no one asked a woman's name before they bandaged her wound. They built a life not of spectacle, but of everyday labor. Marcus kept his fields and still rose at dawn to coax the stubborn earth. Eliza's hands grew patient, her face less tight. They sat together outside the cabin under the night when the air went cool and the stars were few and sure. They did not rush marriage. Trust is a craft that grows by steady strokes. When Marcus finally carved a wooden ring and set it on the clinic desk, he said, "Only if you want to." She slid it onto her finger with a smile that was its own answer. Years passed. The school added a teacher. A telegraph line reached the valley's edge. But what changed most was belief. The town decided that sanctuary meant more than a piece of paper. It meant action. Mothers learned that courage can be taught. Men learned that standing up could be quieter than bravado, but no less fierce. One summer evening, a young woman rode in, hollow eyes, torn dress, heavy with child, nameless. Eliza met her at the clinic porch and said what had been said to her years before. "You're safe here. Whatever you're running from stops at the edge of this town." The woman sobbed and clung to Eliza. Marcus stepped forward and offered his coat. The town watched, and a long thread of history turned. A poor cowboy had cut a knot, and the woman he freed repaid him. Not with debt or obedience, but with work, courage, and love. It was a slow, steady love, the kind that mends more than clothes. It became the valley's law of living. Protect those who cannot protect themselves, make a life where there was none, and measure a person by what they do with freedom, not what they cost in coin. If you were moved by this story, tell us where you're reading from and share it with someone who needs a reminder that ordinary people can change a town.